Okay, so before we even get started, I wanted to make a correction from the prologue video. I was saying that gold hammer was Stormbreaker. It's really Mjolnir. I had several theories like that could have been like another universe's Stormbreaker or something. Thinking out loud, and I ended up saying it in the video. And that's my fault to those who didn't know. Alright man, let's get into it. We have the Immortal Thor, issue 1. So we start here in a mysterious place with a narration. And the narrator brings up the 10 realms and how they're filled with gods, magicians, elves, dwarves, angels, and dead souls. And where this character is, there are no realms and there are no gods. Because gods are things of stories. And those stories are shadow play cast on a cave wall. And the narrator asks, what brings the shadow and what blocks out the light? And to start out the dialogue, the narrator says, if you want to understand, you need to open your mind. And to finish the dialogue, this question is asking if we understand yet or not. And this new mysterious character says, the wheel turns. And when I read it, I'm like, what wheel is turning? What is he talking about? And stuff like that in the story makes me more interested because I want to find out what it is. And now we get to see some frost giants going against the warriors 4. And the frost giant Skrymir tells them to attack. And he's a wizard in Jotunheim. And Skrymir says he's the true and rightful king of Jotunheim. Now the narrator continues their dialogue asking about Asgard, which is the realm of the heroes of legend, the Aesir god. And the narrator says that Asgard is no longer golden, but instead silver. And that is because in the land of the gods, it is now winter. Now we see Hogun and Fandral talking about Skrymir and his magic. But Vostak like, bro, we gonna end up frozen. But Hildegard is like, don't worry and have no fear. And she tells him that because their king is there. And the narrator says Thor did not stand in battle, but he soared. And now we finally see the king of Asgard. So Skrymir is like, I launch a full attack with my magic against Asgard, and they only respond with one god. And Skrymir talking about he gonna pack Thor up, and he asks him what his warriors gonna do. And I'm just sitting here like, dog, you know you the one that's gonna get packed up. And now Thor says he's not in the mood because he's disappointed. And Skrymir just looks stuck and he like, you disappointed? And he just wonders why Thor is disappointed because he turned everything to snow and ice. Then they start to laugh at Thor. But Thor tells Skrymir that his words were not for him. And I'm glad Thor has a controlled temper because he could have just destroyed him by the way they disrespected him like that. Then Thor tells the frost giants who he's talking about. He says, his unfaithful servant. And Skrymir is like, the sky? And Thor tells them that even though it's a snowstorm, it's still his storm to command. And then he tells the storm to leave. Then lo and behold, the land clears up and the sun is coming out. Then the frost giants start to run away because they'll melt in the sun. And Skrymir wants them to hold their ground. But Thor tells Skrymir to let them go. And the reason he let them go because they were young giants and he knew they were persuaded by Skrymir. And if Thor let loose the armies of Asgard, it would have been a massacre. And now Thor and Skrymir are getting ready to fight. Then he calls Thor soft and unleashes his magic against him. And from the ancient tales, Skrymir takes the name Utgard-Loki. And he continues to talk about what his magic gonna do to Thor. And Thor's like, yeah, if it hits me. And he tells Skrymir that it's best to leave how he came. And Skrymir continues to throw his magic at Thor. And he says that Thor is afraid, which is cap. And he mentions that he only has to hit Thor one time with his magic. And Thor says those words are true, and that Mjolnir will say the same. And now the narrator is back saying some people would say that Mjolnir did speak in that moment, and it was eloquently. Then Skrymir's body shatters by Thor's attack with Mjolnir. That boy Skrymir got put in the pack easy. Now Fandral is like, good job, bro. And it was best for Thor to end it that way, very quickly. But he didn't want to even fight Skrymir. Now Hildegard tells Thor that Skrymir's death might not have been permanent because his head has grown back before. And we saw Skrymir die before, and that was back in Thor issue 3 when Jane was Thor. And he froze Jane, then he ate her. And then out of nowhere, she just blew his head off. Now back to the story. Thor says that Skrymir's attack signals that there's a greater problem on its way. And since Loki rules over Jotunheim, Thor asks, what was Loki doing during this time? Was Loki trying to prevent it, or was Loki trying to encourage it? Then Loki pops up out of nowhere saying that they've been there the whole time. And I know Thor was like, come on, man. Now Hogan and Fandral are talking about how Loki looks. And then Loki and Fandral compliment each other. Then Thor says it's enough because he's ready to talk to Loki. And as he asks Loki about being the ruler of Jotunheim, Loki says that it didn't work out. Now Thor is shocked by this. He in the back like, oh, hell no! Hell no! And now Thor is yelling at Loki. And he's like, bro, you claimed the throne and you have the responsibility. You can't quit what you started. And Loki's like, nah, you can't. Now project that onto me. Then Loki says the giants in Jotunheim can rule themselves. And since Loki can be a man or woman, Loki says that they can rule their own self. And Thor's like, alright, bet. I ain't gonna force you to rule over Jotunheim more than I rule over Asgard. Then he tells Loki like, bro, I remember your past mischiefs. And he wonders what makes Loki come back to Asgard. But since Loki is the god and the goddess of the story, the Scald of the Realms, they just go wherever the stories are. Now the narrator is back, and they say it's true in a way, in that it's not the whole truth. But for every storyteller, there's a liar, a trickster, and a traitor. And the first and utmost allegiance is to the story. And no cap, bro, seeing that missing tooth right there made me think of this story from the prologue. And I know y'all was thinking the same thing probably. Loki really got some stuff up their sleeve. And the narrator says to trust is to risk your own heart. And that's some real life stuff. Now Thor is glad that Loki's home. And he said that they'll clean up his mishaps as they go. Then Loki says, let's whip up a nice rainbow bridge. And I'm like, man, they finna fix the Bifrost. And I was waiting for the Bifrost to get fixed, so I'm a little turnt on the inside. I'm sitting there reading it like, and I know y'all probably peeped it too. The narrator asks again, do we understand? And if we don't understand yet, we will. Now we see Thor and Asgard looking upon the broken Bifrost. And he said before it was Asgard's greatest treasure. And since it was broken, it marks his greatest failure as the king of Asgard. And me personally, in my opinion, I don't think it was a failure because he was out of his mind when it happened. And if you don't know what happened, he broke the Bifrost by holding back Sif's power. And that happened during Banner of War. Now Thor is saying that Loki said that it would have taken up to 10,000 years to fix the Bifrost. And Thor wonders what dark deal has Loki made. But Loki didn't make a deal. They found it within the collector's vault. Loki probably stole it for real, no cap. And Loki says it's called the Wand of Whatever, aka the Wand of Whatever. And it's filled with mystery magic from the elders of the universe. And Thor says it's best not to know about Loki's adventures. Then he tells Loki to make the attempt to fix it, and he's going to stand on guard just in case if it so happens to backfire. And the narrator says it wouldn't backfire because the wand was made of whittled driftwood, and that it was a prop with a pretty story attached to it. And the wand hid a lie, and that lie hid a deeper magic. Now as Loki goes up to fix the Bifrost, the narrator says at the heart of the magic, it was a question. And this is in real life also, but in this story, the narrator says that people are told what is possible and allowable for them, who they are, who they can be, and who they shall be. And the narrator brings up how patterns are in stories. The gods have Ragnarok, and Thor even has a Black Winter. And from the speaking point of the Black Winter, which causes death, the narrator asks, what if spring could come again? And what if things grow where nothing could? Imagine if the future is unwritten, the present uncontained. Imagine if you can go anywhere, be anything, and be anybody. And if anybody could write their own story, they would. Then as we see Loki striking the wand to fix the Bifrost, a question is asked. What if all the gods and mortals were free? And what would we do if all of our cages are open? Now we got a fixed and restored Bifrost. Then the narrator says that magic is a symbol and a metaphor. And moments like this are turned into power by stories. And whoever tells a story harnesses that power. And the narrator finishes by saying, no journey is without trial. And spring doesn't come without winter. And that no magic is without cost. Then the narrator apologizes to Thor again, and that makes me wonder what's about to happen. Now Thor can keep his promise to his dad about being in less of a bad mood being on the throne. And since the Bifrost is back, it gives Thor a better mood. And now that it is restored, it gives Sif an easier job to handle. Now Thor says a new chapter for Asgard has started, and he thanks Loki. He has very great gratitude for him. And then Thor looks over, and he sees that Loki has disappeared. And the narrator apologizes again, and I just wonder what for. And Loki leaving like that troubles Thor. And I would wonder what's going on too if one of my siblings left like that. Now Sif is talking about how Thor is never going to be comfortable on his throne because he's always going to be doing something, whether in Asgard or somewhere else. Then she tells him that he's had enough Asgard for the day, and that he needs to visit his other home. Then Thor takes off on the Bifrost, and he heads to Earth, his second home. Then the narrator asks, is it strange for Thor's heart to be glad to leave his original home of Asgard? But his family knew that his soul was between the two worlds of Asgard and Earth. Now Thor loved being on Earth, and the people there loved him as well. But they didn't love him as a god. And Thor had no worshippers on Earth, and he didn't want that either, because the people of Earth were his friends. And if you needed help as a friend in need, he would do that. And he would do everything in his power to stop it. And he wouldn't stop until justice was served. And I'm glad Thor enjoys himself on Earth. Like you can see he even had a couple drinks with him. And a lot of people welcome Thor on Earth, especially the places where kindness and hope were. Now Thor flies off at night, and he needs a moment to himself, some solitude, and to be alone with his thoughts. Now Thor is to himself, and he wonders how long it's been, because the way he perceives time is very different from people on Earth. He could be gone in a couple days in his mind, but years have passed on Earth. And he calls on some old friends that are now deceased. And the two that stuck out to me were Aya Nahanda, who is the ancient Black Panther, and Captain Marvel. Now Thor is demanding the universe to tell him, but it cannot be done. And he does it not to test his power, but his limits. And he says there are forces out here that even a god must bow down to. But Thor isn't the type to bow down to anybody if they oppose him. And Thor is secure in himself, and Mjolnir is whole now. And the weight of Mjolnir no longer defines him. And since he has the magic of the Allfather, he decides who's worthy of Mjolnir. And since he's been king for a while, he must command himself and do what he has to do for himself, and not follow what his father used to do. But he says that's not as easy as commanding the sky. And there is a storm going crazy, and he says it's too much for the mortals there on Earth, and he commands it to leave. And now the narrator is saying that Thor made an error, and that it was not his thunder to command. Then Thor falls off the Statue of Liberty, and the narrator is saying that Thor was only the god of the storm, but who is the god of the superstorm? Now me being a person who loves lore and mythos, Al Ewing is finna add more to it. Cause when it said who was the god of the superstorms, I'm like, oh man, what's finna happen? Then we see Thor hit the ground and starts to get up, and the narrator says, what god will reign when hurricane winds destroy the earth? And what god condemns the darkness of humanity instead of celebrating the light of humanity? And this narrator is cooking for real with these questions. They ask what are the gods to the Aesir, as the Aesir are the gods to the human beings on Earth. And as Thor looks up in utter shock, the narrator asks, what dark place would it come from? Now I'm wondering what evil is about to come. Then we see a dark figure in the sky, holding lightning bolts. And this is the same character from the beginning, saying the wheel has turned. And this character says this world has stagnated too long and has chosen illusion over change. And he says they sleepwalk through a dream of life and that he's the bloody awakening. Then he says where he's from, and it's from Utgard, which is the storied land that Skrymer was talking about earlier. And this character says that it's the land of the truth, and that he's come to shatter this false world. And his name is Toranos, and he is the Utgard-Thor. And now we see destruction and chaos. Now Thor thinks back on Skrymer taking the name of Utgard Loki. He thought of his past trip when he went to the Utgard lands. And that took place during Thor issue 272. And Thor and Loki met Skrymer, who was really the Utgard king. And they were doing these challenges and they was losing. And now we see more chaos throughout the city from the storm. And now Thor tells Toranos to listen to him. And Thor tells Toranos that he's in his true element. and that he calls on the might and power that flows through his veins. Because he is the son of Odin and Gaia, who defends Earth as the Avenger, bringing justice. And most of all for Thor, he is the All-Father, and he summons and strikes Toranos with every bit of that power. Then the narrator says that the Earth trembles at the war that just began, and that it reaches beyond Midgard. Another statement from the beginning is repeated. If you will understand, then open your mind. And now somebody is saying the wheel has turned. And where there are no realms. And now there's another mysterious character, and they say that their brother Toranos walks the world again. Then we see Gaia, and the other character says that Thor, her son, hinders Toranos' rage. And they ask Gaia, is it how she wanted it to be? And she says a little bit, but she would have chosen other options if they were available. And that's because she has something sealed up from a very long time ago. Then I peep their brother and sister, so I'm just like, yo, what's going on? Then this mysterious character talks about how they're brought up in dark legends alongside with Toranos and Gaia. And you already know they are powerful because their names are used as talisman. And he remembers Skrymer, and he asks, has Thor fought anybody named Toranos in his past? But he hasn't. It was a troll named Daenerys. And that took place during The Mighty Thor run, written by Matt Fraction. Now we start to get more of a revealing of this new character, and they say that Thor will be tested by more than just trolls. And if he fails, it would be the end of everything. And they have a rule that all things must grow and live, or wither and die. And this Age of Marvels is not an exception to the rule. And Gaia says the outcome cannot be predicted. Then Gaia says Loki might be testing Thor as well, alongside with what he got going on in front of him. And Loki plays no favorites. And this dude starts to laugh as he remembers Loki. And he says Loki, the troll, and Skrymer are their understudies. Then he says his sister Gaia was once his jailer and his ancient foe. And I would like to see that flashback. And they most likely fought because of that, and I would like to see that too. Then his character says, if Thor can be tested by Loki, then he will be utterly destroyed by the Utgard Loki. And that was the conclusion to the Immortal Thor issue 1. I appreciate y'all for watching. Like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. There will be more of the Immortal Thor, so stay tuned. God bless. I'm out.